Hi, Dr. Ron here, and I want to invite you to join our Unstress Health community. Now, like this podcast, it's independent of industry and focuses on taking a holistic approach to human health and to the health of the planet. The two are inseparable. There are so many resources available with membership, including regular live Q&As on specific topics with special guests, including many with our amazing Unstress Health Advisory panel. Now, we've done hundreds of podcasts, all worth listening to, with some amazing experts on a wide range of topics. Many are world leaders. But with membership, we have our Unstress Lab podcast series, where we take the best of several guests and carefully curate specific topics for episodes which are jam-packed full of valuable insights. So join the Unstress Health community. If you're watching this on our YouTube channel, click on the link below or just visit unstresshealth.com to see what's on offer and join now. I look forward to connecting with you. Hello and welcome to Unstress. My name is Dr. Ehrlich. Now, whenever we hear the story about essential fatty acids, generally it's really quite straightforward. Omega-3 is anti-inflammatory, omega-6 is pro-inflammatory. Things like fish oils are good, seed oils are bad, and it's basically, that's the story. But it's a lot more nuanced than that. My guest today sheds light on just that, how nuanced the terms essential fatty acids are. My guest is Professor Brian Peskin, and Brian is a leading scientist, globally recognized as an expert on essential fatty acids, and had advanced the work of Otto Warburg in cellular oxygenation. Now, this is a fundamental shift. Otto Warburg got a Nobel Prize in the 1930s, but it's a fundamental shift in how we think of diseases, how they occur in general, diseases in general, but cancers in particular. And we've done programs on the metabolic cause of disease. We had Professor Thomas Seyfried on a few years back, and we've explored disease from a metabolic perspective, from a mitochondrial perspective on many occasions. And that is the work of Otto Warburg, which is interestingly coming back into focus. Now, Brian is a graduate of MIT and combines extensive knowledge of engineering, biochemistry, and physiology. Now, over the last 20 years, he's conducted extensive research on the relationships of parent essential oils, a term we discuss in this podcast, to cardiovascular disease. And for the last 14 years, Professor Peskin's work has focused on cellular immunity to disease and anti-inflammatory pathways, all of which we discuss. He's authored 4 books: Radiant Health, The 24-Hour Diet, The Hidden Story of Cancer, and Parent Essential Oil Solutions, and he's contributed to numerous journal articles. Look, this gives us a whole new and more nuanced perspective on what essential fatty acids are all about. I hope you enjoy this conversation I had with Professor Brian Peskin. Welcome to the show, Brian.
Thanks for having me.
Brian, we're going to be talking about fats today, and fats have been bandied around in healthcare for certainly the last 50 years.
Yeah.
And if the evidence is anything to go by, that's been a very confusing story that hasn't resulted in great health. So I wondered if we could just start with some basics about fats, good and bad. What's your view of fats?
Well, the whole problem is they're all saying seed oils are toxic, right? And that statement is partly true. Processed, adulterated oils are toxic. They will kill you. This was known in 1956. What that means is hydrogenated, interesterified. If you're going into a commercial supermarket, you're getting processed oil. So the only way they're not processed is organic. So seed oils have the potential to either be absolutely required for great health or poison. Now, the reason they're required is people don't know this, and the health professionals never say it. I don't think they know it either. We have 100 trillion cells. Every cell is a bilipid membrane. That's fat. Lipid is fat and oils. Out of the half lipid portion of the membrane, half is protein, the other half is lipid. So out of the lipid portion, 25 to 33, a quarter to a third, are what I call parent essential oils. That's LA, parent omega-6, linoleic acid, and parent omega-3, which is linoleic acid. I don't care about the terms. All anybody listening needs to know, Doc, is body can't make either. That is why they are called EFAs, essential oils. 6 can't go to 3, 3 can't go to 6. And in nature, the vast, vast, vast majority of foods has a ton more omega-6 than omega-3. So nature made this for a reason. And I know what you're thinking, but Brian, they're all saying we're getting overdosed out of omega-6. 12 to 1, 20 to 1. When you look at the tissues and organs and do a little algebra, 12 to 1 is the number in favor of parent omega-6. So we have 12 times more omega-6 than omega-3 in the body. And in the average organ or tissue, 4 to 1 in favor of parent omega-6. 6.5 to 1 is your muscles, which is 50% of your body weight, in favor of parent omega-6. In the fat stores, 20 to 1 in favor of parent omega-6. So when you do a little algebra, like I said, you get 12 to 1. So anybody saying we're getting overdosed with omega-6, wrong. We are getting overdosed with processed omega-6 because all the fast food restaurants have highly processed omega-6. Even the fine food restaurants, all the commercial frozen food, baked food is processed omega-6. And the reason they're processing these oils is because you can't have oatmeal or rice or spaghetti, pasta smelling like fish that's gone bad. The problem is stopping the oxygen transfer, stops the rancidity, stops the rusting, but it kills us. And Otto Warburg's work with cancer is all about oxygen transfer, and the processed oils shut it down, and we'll talk about that in a little while. But the health profession is making an enormous mistake. I guess they don't know what an adjective is. You hit it before. Processed is the killer. Unprocessed, organic. And organic is two things, Doc. Means there's no chemicals or anything in the growing of the plant. And then in the production of the oils, the oil extraction, there's no chemicals. Typically, a commercial food oil, whether it's sunflower oil, safflower oil, olive oil, I don't care what the oil is, will have a ton of chemicals, catalysts, heated up to 400 degrees. Organic has none of that. So you're getting a poison. And Dr. Spiteler, who was the top German biochemist at the time, I actually talked to him, said all the problem is, it's called oxidized cholesterol because cholesterol transports these oils in the system. So everybody will hear the term oxidized cholesterol. It's coming in ready-made from the food we're eating, not going bad in the body. This is the other mistake they all made. Oh, these oils are all going bad in the body. To go bad in the body, they need at least 3 double bonds. It's called a bisallylic bond. You have to know organic chemistry. It's a double bond and then a single bond. It's technical, but you don't need to know that. So what counts is oils like fish oil. We've all been told you need fish oil, right? Are you told that in Oz too?
Sure.
Okay. Fish oil is antifreeze for a fish. Let me start there. Why? Because I throw you in frigid water, you would freeze because we have a lot of water in us. Water freezes at 32 degrees. So nature can either use alcohol, in which case you'd have a drunk fish, right? Or long chain essential oils, because they don't freeze either. And then Dr. Rowan, who co-wrote the PEO solution for parent essential oils, the essential again, is a vegetarian. He goes, Brian, I'll prove that it's antifreeze. Guess how much less DHA is in a warm water fish at 70 degrees? Because there's rivers and lakes that are 70 degrees. I said, I don't know. I'm sure it's a heck of a lot less. He goes, more than a heck of a lot. 14 times less. 14 times less. What are we doing? We're taking supraphysiologic overdoses of DHA, and I can give you the numbers the brain uses in a little while. You won't believe how little it is, and it's going bad immediately. So when it goes bad immediately, DHA spontaneously oxidizes. And actually, Dr. Holbert's done a lot of work with this. He's from Australia. He's a scientist whose work I quoted immensely in PEO Solution. Brilliant guy. And this work never makes it into the clinical medical magazines like JAMA, New England Journal of Medicine, that the clinical physicians, at least in America, read. It stays in the hardcore science like Journal of Biologic Chemistry, Journal of Lipids, the magazines and the publications I read, or the medical textbooks, but the physicians don't read them anymore after they're out of medical school. And the biggest mistake the whole medical community made early on was, remember I told you it's 4-to-1 in all the tissues? The majority of the tissues and organs, like the brain, not the brain, but the liver, the kidneys, the heart. They thought all the parents would be converted to derivatives. So DHA, EPA, like in fish oil, is called a derivative. You start with the parent, it's like the parents and the offspring, and they get bigger. They elongate. It's not shorter, it's longer. They thought all of them would be converted to derivatives. So let's make it easy on the body. Give everybody a ton of derivatives. You make it easy. Except today, with high resolution chromatography, 0.1% go to derivatives. So from those parents, 1 part in 1,000 go to derivatives, almost nothing.
Let's just,
and the parents stay in parent form.
Brian, let me just, because you've thrown up a lot there, and we're
Yes,
going to come
I
back
have.
and talk. You have. And I just want to come back to my original thing about fats, and you've made a very strong point about the importance of omega-6 and
Yes.
how disproportionately high it is. What's your view of the demonization of saturated fats through our public health story?
Yeah, you're right. It's been demonized. Now, a saturated fat can't combine with anything, so it is your ideal fat to fry in because it can't get screwed up. It can't become rancid. So I love cooking, especially deep frying coconut oil, which is 93% saturated. Wonderful oil. You can use monounsaturated, meaning there's one double bond, like avocado oil. Olive oil can be used, but not the best because it has a lower smoke point. So avocado oil is 440 degrees before it starts smoking. Coconut oil is 400 degrees. And you want to make sure they're organic, so there's no chemicals and they're not poison when you're eating them. And I calculated just 1 teaspoon of oil with 1% processing will have sitting at the gate outside those 100 trillion cells, 30,000 cells, 30,000 molecules rather, of bad fat wanting to come in. So I know martial arts, you put 30,000 people in front of me, I'm dead. They're just going to bowl me over. Thank God they don't go into the cell, because Dr. Lanz proved with radioisotope testing in 1990, the amount of bad oils in the cell is proportional to what you're eating. So if I'm eating half good organic oils and half supermarket oils, it's 50-50 in the cell. Even though they're all waiting to get in, they don't get in. But they cause inflammation.
Can I ask you another question about the
but
fats?
Saturated fat, no issue. And there's no saturated fat in an arterial clot. Excellent question. It's 87% omega-6 that's been processed is in an arterial clot. This is in the heart disease journals, and nobody is saying this. Even the American Heart Association back in 2009, 15 years ago, said to call omega-6 inflammatory is wrong. It is highly anti-inflammatory. You have a naive understanding of biochemistry. So this is how bad our medical profession is in America. And then unfortunately, the rest of the world follows us. They forgot what was said 15 years ago. But it's like in the medical profession, it always starts with me. There is no history. I'm an engineer by training. And you watch the engineering shows, and it's always the brilliant invention today was based on the brilliant engineer that came up with this 10 years ago, who stood on the shoulders of the genius engineer from 50 years ago. In medicine, nope. There's no history. It's just me, me, me. And look what's happening. America's the sickest developed country.
Oh, yeah. Well, I think it's also interesting what you just said there about clots being primarily omega-6.
87%.
87%. And yet the heart foundations will be telling us to avoid saturated fat. But
there's none in there.
But to consume, and this is actually part of what I often say, it's a great business model, just not a very good health model, that the advice by the Heart Foundation to avoid saturated fat and eat canola oil, safflower oil, sunflower oil, which makes up the majority of the clot, is quite a remarkable public health message.
It's disgusting. Let me tell you where this came from. So I've got the references right here. That's why I have these glasses on. Felton, quote, dietary polyunsaturated fatty acids and compositions of human aortic plaque, Lancet, identification and quantification of unique fatty acid and oxidative products in human atherosclerotic plaque using high-performance lipid chromatography so you can analyze what's in there. This isn't somebody guessing. Annals of Biochemistry, structure elucidation of oxygenated lipids in human atherosclerotic lesions. Eicosanoids, that's the long-chain derivatives of the parents. That's the technical term. They're called an eicosanoid. That's prostaglandins, leukotrienes. 3 major medical references, journals, the best in the world, they're not touched by the medical profession. It's sinful.
It is sinful.
Not very, very hard because I talk about this like you do. And people go, yeah, but the Heart Association says this. My doctor says this.
Yeah.
They're all wrong. But truth today doesn't seem to matter. It's really, really unfortunate. That's why I get so passionate about this.
Me too, Brian. And that's why we're talking. Now, one other question. I'm still back on our first thing about fats.
Yeah.
Something we hear also a lot about is that meat, animals that are pasture fed have a better balance of omega-3 and omega-6, and those that are in feedlots or caged or high industrial meat production are disproportionately high in omega-6 and have very little omega-3. What's your reaction to that message?
Well, remember, we need 12-to-1 omega-6 to omega-3 in the body. So you need a pile of omega-6. The feedlots are feeding them corn, which no cow would eat on its own. Now, if you grow up eating that, they have to live on grass. When they're younger, they die. The meat industry tried shoving corn down them because it's cheaper right out of the block, and they all died. So what you'll see is, grown with corn, but finished with grass or initially with grass. But you're right. Now, grass is one of the very few foods high in omega-3. Way more omega-3. Lettuce is too, but there's very few foods. And what you'll hear is like Seventh-day Advents. Oh, they're so healthy because of the omega-3 in the nuts. Walnuts. There is omega-3 in the walnut. What they've conveniently forgot to tell you is there's 5 times more omega-6 in the walnut. So the ratio is 5-to-1, parent omega-6 to omega-3. Even, and now this is very interesting, to show you how little of the omega-3 you want, the grass is mainly omega-3, but in the grass-fed cow, it's 2-to-1, parent omega-6 to parent omega-3. So the body burns it all up in the cow even. In the big, dumb cow, nature doesn't want the 3. And here we're told, not the parent, to take all the derivatives, DHA, EPA. And what's happening is those overdosages are displacing the parent omega-6 in all the cells, and that's why we're getting all these diseases. But very good point. The body wants very little parent omega-3, and it wants almost no DHA from fish. And Dr. Roman also said, Brian, here's 6 cultures that are landlocked. They eat no fish at all. Tell me how much brain impairment they have and how much visual impairment. 0. So we keep getting misled. My joke, Doc, is everything the average person knows about nutrition, and they know a lot, is wrong. It's not based on science. What got me into this whole field is I'm an electrical engineer from MIT by training. So the input's the food. You're the systems guy. The output is your state of health. My wife became type 1 diabetic at age 30, doing everything America said was right. Doctor's recommendations made her worse. And it's, Brian, you're a science guy. What the hell do I do? So luckily, MD Anderson has one of the top 10 medical libraries in America. It's called the Jesse Jones Library. MD Anderson, if you don't know, is the biggest cancer center in the world. And they were kind enough to let me spend 5 years researching there. And it was, my goodness, the science is here. What we're being told is the exact opposite. Somebody has to start writing. So I've done 4 books, highly science-based, and giving people the science. And if they look at my website, they can get that too. It's like all the 30 bucks, all in digital form. These books are classics in their field. And because people don't read books anymore, Doc, we don't publish them in book form. We do electronic. But at least people can get them. So there's one on cancer. There's one on the oils. It's called PEO Solution with Dr. Rowan. There's one on 24-hour diet because the doctors were asking me, what diet do I do to give my patients? So everyone has the same guts, but it's a different focus. So if it's cancer, what do I eat? What oils do I take? It's made for you.
So, and I wanted to talk a bit about all of that. But the other one, before we leave the oil, basic question about oils, what's your view of fish oils given the toxicity of the ocean in which we now live? I used to think that actually heavy metal was the problem, but now plastics permeate even the smallest of fish. What's your view of fish oils as an essential supplement or nutrient?
No, you raised a very, I'm going through some stuff. You raised a very, very good thing. The oceans are toxic as heck now. So any fish, you better really know what kind of fish you're eating. And any kind of fish that's farmed is horrible too, because they're giving them all antibiotics, which is very, very, very bad. And fish oil is physiologically the wrong substance. Remember I told you it's antifreeze for fish? Here's the next thing everybody needs to know. First thing is, before you open your mouth and go, dosages. How much DHA does the brain use a day? Have you ever seen this written by anybody? No. Have you ever seen, I'm asking you, have you ever seen it in a journal? In a publication, anything?
Well, I haven't, but that doesn't. But go on, make the point.
No, nobody has because it's not done. Yep. And the answer is 2 to 6 milligrams. Now, if you compare this with the dosages these geniuses are prescribing at 1,000 milligram fish oil capsule, which is rather standard, 60% of it's DHA EPA, 60% of 1,000, 600. What's 600 divided by 2?
Yep.
A big
300.
150.
Yeah.
So we are getting 100 to 300 times overload per capsule. You have the health profession telling you you need 4,000 milligrams a day of fish oil. And you are getting such an overdose that is just beyond belief. 100 to 300 times overdose per each fish oil capsule. Put that in perspective. Take 100 aspirin, call me in the morning. Don't. I'm being very facetious. You will bleed to death and die. This is what the health profession is doing on a daily basis with fish oil. Here's where it came up. Imaging incorporation of circulating DHA into the human brain using PET tomography. Journal of Lipid Research. So the scientific information is there. You are getting none of it, and people spout out anything on the internet, and it's absolutely horrific. Fish oil is a toxic poison. You don't need it. Any normal human being can convert all the parent omega-3 to the DHA, even if they have no fish. There's plenty of people that don't eat fish. That's where it comes from. Don't eat algae. It actually comes from algae. The fish eat the algae. The fish don't make DHA. The algae has it. But it is a super pharmacologic overdose of poison. But Brian, the brain's loaded with DHA. I just told you, it is. It's 14% DHA. It's also 10% arachidonic acid, which is from the omega-6 side, but you're only getting 4 to 6 milligrams a day. Well, the first thing that comes to mind is, wait a minute. I got a big brain. It's 4% of body weight. How long is that DHA hanging around? 2.5 years. That's the half-life of DHA in the brain, meaning half of it stays, then it degrades.
Yeah. Yes.
2.5 years. So why is it not going bad? The antioxidants in the brain. But what happens is you get a genius telling you to take fish oil supplements. You take them. They spontaneously go bad, oxidize, which is rusting at room temp. Remember, we're 98.6, so it's going spontaneously oxidizing. All the antioxidants come from the brain and everywhere else to try and stop the oxidation from what you just ate. And now you have no antioxidants in the brain. Gee, in America, don't know how it is where you are, rampant Alzheimer's, dementia, frontal lobe, no critical thinking.
Yes.
It is horrific. Is it bad in Oz too?
Yeah, neurodegenerative diseases.
We didn't have any of that 20 years ago.
Are affecting young and old.
Yep.
Young and old.
They're not diseases of old age anymore. And a lot of it is we're killing ourselves unknowingly.
Yeah. Well, this is a subject we explore from many different directions on this program. And there are many different directions that we could be killing ourselves with. Another term that you've used, and I have to admit, I've been interested in nutritional medicine for a long time, but you've used the word parent oil, and it may be my own fault, but it's not a term that we hear a lot about. You've used it a few times already in our conversation. Let's just back up a little bit here and talk about parent. What does
it
parent
is in the
oil
medical
mean?
literature. I didn't come up with it. I came up with parent essential oils, PEOs. But parent is the term. That's LA, linoleic acid. That's the omega-6 they're talking about in the seeds that are toxic. And they are toxic only if they're processed, not organic. And that's the parent. So there's parent omega-6 and parent omega-3, ALA, alpha linoleic acid. Those are the two. EFAs stands for essential fatty acids. I don't like the term because you hear the word acid and it's a chemistry term. It's not like hydrochloric or sulfuric acid. So I coined the term parent essential oils. Those are the only two. If you don't get them from food, you have 100 trillion cells that are deficient. And nobody except me is talking about this. One guy trying to help the whole world. So the weight in my shoulders is pretty big. And they are all tied to anti-inflammation. On the omega-6 side, you're told, oh, the omega-3 is so big on anti-inflammatory. Next to zero. It's all the omega-6 side, starting with PGE1. It's called prostaglandin series 1. And the way it goes is, how do you make these derivatives? Starts with the parents, and then there's an enzyme, delta-6 desaturase. It's called D6D. That's what breaks it apart and starts making it longer. And the first thing it does is it allows PGE1. Prostaglandin series 1 is by far the strongest anti-inflammatory there is. And in 9 diseases and disorders, it is known there's an impairment in the delta-6 pathway, because once it's chronically inflamed, it's just gone. You can't bring it back. So what I do is work on, thank God, we can help compensate for that impairment and bypass most of it. So even if it's not working, we still get the effect as though it works. But the parents are key, and everybody's concentrating on the derivatives. The complete wrong thing. And again, fish oil, antifreeze for a fish, you're getting a pharmacologic overdose of hundreds of times overdose on a daily basis, killing yourself. And the worst part is the fish oil displaces the omega-6. You've heard of the mitochondria, right?
Of course.
Of course. It's the energy producers for every tissue and organ you have in your body. This is where the energy comes from. And there's hundreds of mitochondria per cell. So we have 100 trillion cells. Most of those cells have 10 to 100 mitochondria. There's an inner layer of the mitochondria. It's called cardiolipin. And it's all parent omega-6. Loaded on the internet with people saying it's omega-3. Either lying because they know my work, I'm very well known in America, or they just don't know. Either way, I don't care, because they're opening their mouths, killing people. Americans have no energy and they don't heal. And the reason is the mitochondria isn't working. And Otto Warburg's work with cancer was all in the mitochondria, and it's all tied to the parent omega-6. So it's a tragic, tragic state of affairs. You hit it right in the head. You need the parent omega-6, parent omega-3, the PEOs, and everything else takes care of itself. You do not need... Where do you think fish oil came from? Rotten fish. What happened? I was around when this started, by the way. I'd go to the health shows, and they'd be selling this stuff. I'd look at the distributors. You're selling any? No. People didn't want it, but after a $100 million campaign lasting 10 years, conning everybody. But just imagine you're a top restaurant, and I'm a fisherman, and I have all this bad fish. I can't sell it to them. What do you do with it? Fish oil. My joke is, people are so desperate and so sick, they'll buy anything. And the nutritional industry preys on these people and takes waste products and turns them into supplements.
Hi, Dr. Ron here, and I want to invite you to join our Unstress Health community. Now, like this podcast, it's independent of industry and focuses on taking a holistic approach to human health and to the health of the planet. The two are inseparable. There are so many resources available with membership, including regular live Q&As on specific topics with special guests, including many with our amazing Unstress Health Advisory panel. Now, we've done hundreds of podcasts, all worth listening to, with some amazing experts on a wide range of topics. Many are world leaders. But with membership, we have our Unstress Lab podcast series where we take the best of several guests and carefully curate specific topics for episodes which are jam-packed full of valuable insights. So join the Unstress Health community. If you're watching this on our YouTube channel, click on the link below or just visit unstresshealth.com to see what's on offer and join now. I look forward to connecting with you. Cod liver oil was something that traditionally was used a lot, wasn't it?
Yeah.
Even before the supplement industry got going on it. And the problem, of course, was it had a fishy smell or taste.
Still a problem. You want to hear this one? You won't believe it.
Go on.
1996, Norway. Surrounded by water. Want a lot of fishing. Beautiful cancer registry. They looked at like 90,000 people that didn't have cancer when they started and then had cancer. The women taking cod liver oil had 3 times the melanoma, which is a very vicious skin cancer. 3 times more melanoma from taking the fish oil. This is the best registry in the world. Pathology was done on every one, so they weren't guessing, is it cancer or isn't it? And there was a 20-year follow-up. So take cod liver oil and throw that down the toilet too. You're not a fish. You don't need it.
Okay, now listen.
Published in the International Journal of Cancer, 1996. Yep. This is a medical journal thing that somebody should be reading. Why don't the doctors know this? Because everything starts with me. There is no history.
Well, if it hasn't been put
International Journal of Cancer and forgotten.
Yeah. Now you mentioned Otto Warburger, and I know you've written about this too in your book, The Hidden Story of Cancer.
Yeah.
Let's remind our listener a little bit, because I mean, cancer is a big deal. It's a huge industry, and it's seen traditionally as a genetic problem. But of course, Otto Warburger was around in the 1930s, and his idea that cancer as a metabolic disease is finding traction. We've actually had Thomas Seyfried on the program.
I know.
We talked about it. Tell us a little bit about Otto Warburg. Remind our listener and how that work is relevant to us today.
Sure. Otto Warburg was the greatest physiologist of the 20th century. MD, PhD, Nobel Prize winner. He did not win the Nobel Prize for discovering anything about cancer. People make a huge mistake with that. What Otto Warburg did show with cancer is 35% decrease in cellular oxygenation, even intermittent, meaning it's decrease and then it's normal, decrease and normal. Over years, cancer is spontaneously induced. So thing is not the pulse oximeter you put your finger in, at least in America, they put the pulse oximeter and you got 92 to 98% oxygen saturation. That's irrelevant. You will have 92 to 98 unless you have a disease, then it could go in the 70s. But this is cellular, and you're never going to get it measured because you got to be in the hospital and get surgery and have them go in there. It was proven in 53 and 55 with Goldblatt and Cameron. They deprived heart tissue of oxygen over 2 years. Every one of the cells became cancerous. Then there was another brilliant test where mole spores will not germinate in an oxygen environment. So they gave mole spores to animals, deprived the oxygen. They all got cancer, and the oxygenated blood in those animals didn't get cancer. So it's completely verified in America. Every scientist hated Warburg because he was a Jew working for Hitler, because Hitler was petrified of getting cancer. His mother died of breast cancer. Warburg didn't care about the politics, and he didn't do anything with that. He just had his lab, but conclusively showed lack of cellular oxygenation is the problem. And in America, Campbell in 1976 looked at cystic fibrosis patients and wrote a superb journal article about how you need the parent omega-6 in the cell to get the cellular oxygen. So oxygen can come into the cell and it gets bounced off if the cell has plastic. That's your hydrogenated oil. If it doesn't have the right structure and it's adulterated, not organic, and processed, the oxygen won't diffuse through, and the hormones won't go in like insulin. In America, we have the biggest, insulin resistance you've ever seen. Everybody in America is becoming diabetic. It's just horrible, and it's because of the processed food. But Warburg is absolutely correct. So if you can oxygenate the cell, and the best way to do that is with the PEOs, the parent oils, because you have 100 trillion cells. So there's one prime cause of cancer. That's what our Warburg had. There's hundreds of secondary, like asbestos. Well, what's it do? It inflames, it irritates. What's that do? Sucks up oxygen. Ask any physician, they'll say, how do I get rid of anything? And the answer is oxygenate it. Ozone therapy, Dr. Rowan, my colleague here, hyperbaric chamber. Any doctor, hypoxia is horrible. That's low oxygen tension. So the answer to curing all diseases is oxygen, oxygen, oxygen. And these oils are the best way. They're the analogy of being in the hyperbaric chamber 24 hours a day. And so easy. Vitamins are nothing compared with this. Nothing will help you get oxygen except these oils. Nothing. I don't care what you hear. It won't do it.
Yeah. No, I mean, there's no doubt that this whole processed food and the implications of the fats play a major role. I think there's another aspect to the metabolic story that has contributed to the perfect storm, and that is the demonization of the sun and our bathing ourselves in radiation. I
agree with you more.
Yeah.
To get rid of tuberculosis, they used to say sanatorium. You would go out in the sun. And here's the problem today. You take all this fish oil, it gets displaced into the skin. Skin is all omega-6. There's no omega-3 in there. There's no fish oil in there. But if I take the fish oil capsules, like you're told, the omega-6 gets displaced. Then you start getting these age spots. It's technically called lipofuscin. It's the brown age spots. It's not the UV rays of the sun. It's the heat. What did I tell you happens to fish oil at room temp? Spontaneously rusts, spontaneously oxidizes. Now you get out in the sun, you get 100-degree skin. All the fish oil in your skin's going bad. We didn't used to have skin cancer like this 50 years ago before the fish oil craze. We had none of this. So I look at, why didn't we have these problems 50 years ago? Why do we have them now? And what on earth has changed? And you look at everything. Wealthy people get all these diseases too. So it can't be just socioeconomic. It can be a little, but not that. What we're eating. The one common thing, we're all breathing the same stuff. You're stuck breathing polluted air, whatever. But you're not stuck eating the same polluted food. You can go organic. You can minimize it. And that's the difference. It's not genetic. And back to cancer. I forgot to say this. Weinberg, MIT guy, originator of the oncogene that is genetic, wrote a book, One Renegade Cell. Changed the whole thing. The oncogene theory did not coincide with reality. There's not enough genetic mutations to cause cancer. You need like 7 or 8 per million base pairs of DNA. There's 3. Inflammation now takes center stage. That's his words. That's his quote. I'm an MD Anderson cancer, biggest cancer place in the world. You think they know that? Nope. Medical professionalist 20 years ago. They're all back with the oncogene. And this is like BRCA for breast cancer. Gee, did anybody tell you the majority of women with that gene don't get cancer? How the heck can it be causal? It never ends. Every word out of their mouth, you want an answer, you're going to get one, and it will be wrong. My charter is if I don't know the answer, I'm obligated to tell you that because I follow Richard Feynman, another Nobel Prize winner, but in physics. And you can't make things up. And in your theory, if it doesn't coincide with all the facts, you're obligated to tell, hey, it works over here, but not over here. They don't do that either. They just don't mention where it doesn't work. Like with the bronca gene, they won't tell you the majority of women with it don't get it. Why? Because it's called epigenetics, meaning what I eat. How do you think you change what happens? So the genes, the DNA, has to get what's called methylated. It's like an on-off switch. And that happens, like you know, by what you're eating. So we keep getting lied to, misled. And if you don't learn this stuff on your own, you are doomed. It's tragic. I go to cigar lounge. Obviously, I know something about anti-inflammation, so it doesn't bother me. Poor guy there, nice guy, got a stent, had a heart attack a week ago. I leave. I get a text from a buddy of mine. You know the guy that just got the stent? Yeah. He just collapsed and died of a heart attack. What happened was it was a botched up surgery. I'm guessing. I don't know, but by deduction. And he got a blood clot to the brain or to the lung, probably the brain, from the stent, which doesn't even work anyway. All it does is it takes the plaque and shoves it over. So you get a hole, it's just shoving it over. It's no solution at all. But it doesn't stop. It just doesn't stop. It's one illness or death after another. It's just so sad. It's so easy to fix all this stuff.
Yeah. Well, look, I mean, this is a common theme that we've explored on this podcast many times, and that is some of the public health messages and some of the approaches are more driven by a business model than a health model. But let's get positive about, let's come now to what these parent essential oils, if someone's saying, I want to be taking a parent essential oil, what is some of the, how you're saying it should be unprocessed seed oil?
It's
Is
the
the way to
best
go.
way to get it because seed oil is the best way to get these oils in your body. As long as they're organic, unprocessed, number one way, relatively inexpensive. There's companies that sell. I know there's one that does sell to Australia, where you are.
So it's unprocessed things like flaxseed,
Safflower,
sunflower.
exactly. Yep.
Doesn't matter as long as it's
It has to be the
unprocessed.
right ratio, so there's more omega-6 and omega-3. I like a formula that's 2-to-1, 2.5-to-1 in favor of parent omega-6 to parent omega-3. So sunflower is great for the omega-6, safflower, flax is good for the omega-3. It has some omega-6, but it's a backwards ratio, so you cannot just take flax oil. Don't take borage oil. That's a very bad oil. It makes thromboxane A2, so it makes the platelets stick together. There's no way anybody can know this. I like having some GLA from evening primrose oil, so it bypasses that delta-6 desaturase. The 9 diseases are cardiovascular disease, have an impairment, diabetes, both type 1, type 2. Even if you're shooting insulin, it does not repair the pathway. Respiratory, COPD, Alzheimer's, fatty liver disease, the skin ailments like eczema. There's 9 of them that are in the medical journals that have a known impairment, and the medical profession doesn't even talk about this.
So this is why when we see cold pressed, is that a sign that it is unprocessed? When we see something that is
it's a great
cold
step in the
pressed,
right direction. It means it stays cold because if you don't do that, it can go up to 400 degrees and get chemically ruined. Like I told you, the smoke point in these oils, could be under 400. So they're bringing up to 450. The oil is rancid in that bottle.
but this is in the production on the label.
In the
It says
production,
cold pressed olive oil or
cold pressed is okay. If it's not cold pressed, run. So cold press is a major way there, but that's not even enough. It doesn't say anything about the chemicals. So to get no chemical and cold pressed, organic. It
Organic.
can't
Okay.
have high heat and it can't have chemicals. Those are
Now,
two
before
things.
now before we came on, we just talked about coronary calcium CT score,
The big
and
topic. Yeah.
it's a big topic, and we've covered it on this program with our resident integrative cardiologist, Dr. Ross Walker,
Excellent.
who has for the last 20 or 25 years been saying it is the gold standard in
It is
predicting cardiovascular risk.
way
And
above cholesterol. In America, they know it, but the cardiologists don't talk about it because there's no drug to reverse coronary artery calcium. That's the last stage of heart disease. It's a hard plaque. So what that's going to do is raise the heck out of your blood pressure. See, the artery is supposed to be flexible, like a balloon, but when I have the calcium in there, it makes it like a straw. So that's your 120 over 80, flexible. It's going to be 140 over 120 or 90 or 100 with a straw. Could be 200 over 180, but you're going to have a straw for an artery and you're going to die. But CAC is the number one predictor of death from heart disease.
yes,
And these
sobering,
oils
Brian.
make a difference. We've done testing. It's a non-contrast CT, so very low radiation CT scan. We proved it over the years.
That you can. Now we were talking about this, and you were talking about this EZ Trek
Easy
TRE.
Trek is a medical food for anti-inflammation. We have that category in the States. I don't know what you have in Oz, but there's another supplement. It's called Your Essential Supplements with an S. So if you pull that up on the internet, that is also effective in impeding the progression because of its anti-inflammation. We're not stopping a disease. We're helping compensating for an impaired pathway. But I know they sell that to Australia.
What is in that? What are some of the
It's plant
components
seed
of it?
oils like sunflower oil, flax oil, pumpkin seed oil in the right ratio. So it's not just the oil, it's blending them. And the reason you blend them is so if anybody is overly sensitive, doc, to say one particular oil, you minimize that. So virtually no one is hypersensitive to the blend of oils because so little of each is in there when you add them up. But overall, it has to be within certain ratios. And if you don't know the physiology, like I gave you, the 4-to-1 in the organs, the 6.5 to 1 the muscles, you're not going to be able to design it. You're playing in the dark. They're all amateurs. This is all I do. I live with EFAs and eicosanoids. I have one colleague, Paul Beatty, Toronto, Canada. That's it. No drug company has anybody like me working there. I've asked people, do you have any physiologic EFA guy like me? We have people that measure lipids in the bloodstream. No, not talking in the bloodstream. That's the pathway. That's the highway. I'm talking about in the tissue itself and what's needed. No, we don't do that.
And you have shown, and you have claimed that you can reverse the coronary calcium CT score.
We've
What
seen it
over what
happen. Yes.
over what period of time, and how much of a
6 months.
reduction does one see?
6 months to a year typically. Takes time to a long time for you to get there, but thank God you can reverse it.
And what kind of a change does one see? Like a 5% reduction, 10%,
In the
20,
study we did, it was 14%.
14%. But
And the
importantly,
people
not
doing
the
nothing it was actually 17%, and the control group doing nothing, 14% increase. So the ones taking the PEO-based formulation got negative 17%, decreased it. The ones that weren't taking it increased 14%. So the overall difference between the two groups was 30+%, which is astronomical. To get a drug, you need 20%. That's all. So we
yeah.
beat a drug, and it's
Yeah.
organic.
Interesting. Well, we'll obviously have links to that. I'm intrigued to know, given your whole focus on fats and oils, what the role of diet is in overall health. What kind of advice do you give people to deal with their chronic disease states?
Good question. We mentioned off air ketogenic diet, so absolutely low carb. This is not open to discussion. We have 1 teaspoon of sugar in the bloodstream. That's what I tell everybody. When I was looking at this 25 years ago, 5 millimoles per deciliter. I'm an engineer, okay. I'm a practical guy. What does that translate to? I like teaspoons. 10 minutes later, a teaspoon. It's impossible. I must be off by, a factor of 100 or something. No, there's 1 teaspoon of sugar in our 5 quarts of blood. And we have sensors. So you, me, and everybody else, unless we're diabetic, insulin is tied to 1/10 of 1%, 1 part in 1,000. That's how tight the sensor is for sugar. So 1 teaspoon's in the bloodstream. So the next logical question is, how much is the average American eating? 100 teaspoons. Where's the other 99 go? Body fat. Why? Because insulin. Why? Because in a carbohydrate, you have something called glycerol 3-phosphate that's needed to store body fat. Interesting. So carbs make me fat. Is there an RDA for carbs? No. Interesting. So how do I get rid of this fat? The exercise craze. You better be making exercise your second job. What if I don't want to get fat to begin with? Don't eat the carbs. But Brian, the brain runs on glucose. No, it doesn't. You're forcing it to run on glucose. It's supposed to be running on ketones and fatty acids. Fat and oils is what the brain is supposed to run on, but we're forcing it to run on sugar. Next question. Eat a ton of protein, eat a pound steak. That's all going to go to fat, isn't it? Nope. Protein cannot go to fat. No glycerol 3-phosphate, no insulin response. Sorry, can't do it. Yeah, people going, yeah, but it goes to sugar somewhere in the body. I just care about glycemic in the bloodstream. It doesn't. Do your own test. Eat 6 eggs. Blood sugar won't go up at all. No carbs in there. Will fat go to fat? Nope. No glycerol 3-phosphate, no insulin response. Talk to any diabetic endocrinologist. Fat cannot go to fat. Now, if you eat a pile of fat, like in the ketogenic diet, you won't burn your existing fat. So there's a difference. Fat is the number 1 fuel you burn for energy. There's much more fat in the EFAs going in the bloodstream for energy than there is sugar. And that's what we're supposed to do. But with the high carb diet, we've shorted it out. So ketogenic diet, absolutely. I just call it low carb. Intermittent fasting, you're much better off eating once a day. Not at night, because the dumbest thing you can do, and I used to do it myself, high stress job, I used to eat a pizza at 10 at night, go to bed, 2, 3 in the morning, I'm up needing a quart of water. Here's something everybody needs to know. 2 things. Every ounce of carbohydrates, you need 3 ounces of water. It's like a sponge. So carbohydrates do suck water. Well, Brian, when you go on a low carb diet, all you're doing is losing water weight for 3 days. That's it. Then you're losing fat. Number 2, burn this in your memory. 20. Every 20 calories of carbohydrate is a teaspoon of sugar. So it's very easy to look on those labels and go, how much sugar am I getting? So like all these cereals, all this stuff that have a pizza, 40, 60, grams, or every 5 grams, because now they'll put it in grams, because in America, they're not used.
You guys are still a little bit behind.
Yeah, we're a lot behind. So every 5 grams, you could be eating 40 teaspoons of sugar in a pizza. It doesn't take much, and we are killing ourselves. In America, the average person has become a walking house. The average American is now either overweight or a downright pig. And what they're doing on TV, you see 400-pounders commonplace because they're pandering to the audience. The doctors are acting like it's no problem. I just have one question for you. How many 200-pound overweight people you see at 80 years old? I'll give you the answer. None. They're all dead. So Here's how stupid America is, and I'm one of us, so I can say that. I don't care. Fat and Fit was on the cover of Time magazine. You can be a fat pig and fit. Are you out of your mind? I'm an engineer. The load on the bones, no, you can't. We're made to look normal. If you look at the older movies in the 1940s, 50s, 60s, nobody was fat. Oh, Brian is genetic. Was driving on a major road, went by a school, elementary, looking at all these, must have been 20, between 6 and 10. Not one fat kid there was. Zero. I graduated high school. We had 3 overweight people out of 250. One had a glandular problem. That's what we called it back then. The other 2, I don't know what it was. 3 overweight people out of 250. Now you'll be hard pressed in America anyway to find 3 normal people out of 200. It's just completely flipped. It's tragic, and it's so easy to fix. It's also the PEOs, the parent essential oils, naturally fulfill the appetite so we don't crave the carbs. I get so many people around the world emailing me, Brian, I can't believe the difference. I don't crave the pizza, the ice cream, the sundae, the cookies. There used to being a human billy goat. Then the nutritionist came, oh, doc, you're supposed to eat 6 small meals a day. Really? Have you never read the textbook of medical physiology, you imbecile? Because it's very clear in there, insulin is designed to be produced twice a day. It doesn't store it. You start eating 4 times a day, I have no insulin. Now I put stress on the insulin. Now you burn it out, you become type 1. Every type 2 over time becomes type 1. They don't tell you this either. Our own medical professionals are the cause of the problem. We have the blind leading the blind with no science. It's appalling to me because I'm a hardcore science guy. You think 2 and 2 is 5? Good for you. You better not design the building because the roof is going to cave in and kill everybody. But because in medicine, the body is so great, doc, I can give you the wrong stuff and you don't die for 30 years. Of course you're sick. You're not optimum. You don't have the kind of energy I have. I'm up at 4 a.m. I go to bed at midnight, maybe 1. Boom, 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 boom. Work my tail off, have the cigars, and laser attention. But everybody should be like this, and virtually nobody is because they're listening to garbage on the internet from health people that don't know what they're talking about.
Well, Brian, that's probably a great note for us to finish on. And I must say, so much of what you've said today resonates with us and with, so many other things that you've said. And I love your passion. I share your passion.
Thanks.
And we will, of course, have links to your site and more information about you. So thank you so much for joining us today.
My pleasure. Thanks much.
Well, now I know we have done programs on ancestral diets and on the effect of seed oils. And I think it's important to stress 2 words for which there is unequivocal problems with, and that is the processed nature of, 2 words, 1 word, the processed nature of seed oils. And I think Brian has raised the point that being both unprocessed, cold pressed, and organic are important features of the omega-6 oil story, which makes it a little more nuanced. I thought it was also interesting to hear him comment on the fact that he feels we're taking far too much fish oils. Look, it is a nuanced discussion. I always go back to what is, the wonderful world of food, whole foods, and how they come to us. And I always think that's a great position to fall back on. Anyway, we'll have links to some of Brian's work and his sites, and you can explore that more. And of course, he's written those 4 books, and I would suggest the PO Solution, Parent Essential Oil Solution, might be an interesting read, particularly in this area. And of course, the hidden story of cancer, which brings out, again, highlights the work of Otto Warburg, which is an important focus in healthcare in general. I hope this finds you well. Until next time, this is Dr. Ron Ehrlich. Be well. Feeling stressed, overwhelmed? It's time to unstress your life. Join the Unstress Health community and transform stress into strength. Build mental fitness from self-sabotage to self-mastery. And together, let's not just survive, but thrive. Expert-led courses, curated podcasts, like-minded community and support, and much more. Visit unstresshealth.com today. This podcast provides general information and discussion about medicine, health, and related subjects. The content is not intended and should not be construed as medical advice or as a substitute for care by a qualified medical practitioner. If you or any other person has a medical concern, he or she should consult with an appropriately qualified medical practitioner. Guests who speak in this podcast express their own opinions, experiences, and conclusions.